Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the Marketplace. Coming up, as the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana concludes its meetings, Institute for Economic Affairs insists the over-reliance on the policy rate in addressing high inflation would yield no positive results.
Inflation is also determined, to a large extent by supply and cost factors. So you cannot use the Bank of Ghana policy rate alone, to just manage demand. You have to address the supply factors also.
Also coming up, Data Protection Commission to clamp down on institutions failing to enforce its laws. We hear more about the enforcement exercise set for August 14. Plus, Ghana has no strategic petroleum reserves for crisis moments. Managing Director of the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company confirms but assures there is no cause for alarm now.
We know we don't have money to buy the strategic reserves. We know that, but we are trying. What we do is we make sure we have enough inventory to keep the country running. The nation needs to have a certain conversation, and that conversation should lead to how we're going to finance our strategic reserves.
My name is Daryl. Kwawu. Thanks for being with us. Details coming up. Thanks for staying with us, everyone. And we begin with news that the media budget presentation has been pushed back to Thursday, the 27th of July. Parliamentary correspondent Kwawu Asante joins me on Zoom with more on this. Good afternoon to you, Kwawu. Are you able to confirm this information for us and any reason for the change in date?
Well, yes, Daryl. Initially, government plan was to hold this media budget review on the 27th. In fact, that was the date that the majority leadership announced to the House. But subsequently, the Speaker of Parliament himself came to the floor and said that because Parliament is set to adjourn by the 3rd of August, he believed that that date must be moved forward. And then subsequently, the majority leadership changed that date to 25th of February. And so that was the tentative date we had been working with. And the expectation was that as soon as next week, Tuesday, the Finance Minister will come before the House and present the media budget review. But today, in the business statement, government had decided to go back to the original date of 27th. That is the date that the finance minister expected to come to the House and present this media budget review. So government has, if you want to put it out, we snapped the Speaker of Parliament and is concerned about the 27th date and have affirmed 27th, next week Thursday, as the date to present the media budget review. What is now set to be clarified is whether or not the finance minister will ask for further estimates, whether he will review the projections he made in the 2023 budget presented in November last year. But as of now, we can confirm, as per the business statement presented today, that Ken Ofori-Atta will deliver the media budget review next week, Thursday, to Parliament.
Well, the presentation itself has been described as very critical, the first since we clinched the IMF deal. Do you have any idea what to expect? You're hinting at that when the finance minister makes a presentation. I bet there are high expectations, especially amongst the minority.
Definitely. What they want to find out is how exactly the deal with the IMF is impacting government's fiscal policies that were announced in the media in the budget itself of 2023. Initially, some of the minority MPs have been pushing, for instance, that the finance ministry come before Parliament and put the final details of that IMF deal to MPs. They have not been able to succeed in doing so. And the argument from the majority at the time was that the minister will be presenting the media budget review and all those details will be incorporated in it. So a large part of the media budget review next week Thursday will be in terms of opening up the IMF deal and how it has affected government's plans for this year and the next few years. Also, some of the minority MPs want to know the domestic debt exchange program. What is the success rate? How is it impacting Ghana's debt level as we speak now? All those questions are set to come. But really the next question is a matter of revenue. Government has been saying a lot of things about how the revenue measures they've been putting in have not been successful so far. We know that e-levy has not given government the amount of money they wanted. And so we do not know yet if government has any firm plans to probably introduce new taxes, new revenue measures, expand others, probably delete others. Those are the vexed questions, and our ears are on the ground to find out whether or not the minister will be bringing those details next week, Thursday.
And finally, we've had a bit of a situation in Parliament this week. The House has not been able to sit because they've not been able to form a quorum, and that has affected government business. Give us a background to that and what the impact will be if this goes on for a while.
Right, so as of today, we'll probably have this situation having been resolved later, because today, per my count in the chamber, there's no quorum, but no one has raised the issue of quorum, so the business will progress. But the whole of this week, the House has suffered several adjournments because both sides have not been able to bring in enough numbers. For the minority side, it's intentional because they've decided that they're going to bring in very little number of MPs so that they can raise matters of quorum and sabotage the business of government on the floor. The government side, we know that a number of MPs have been agreeing with Dr. Bawumia campaigning ahead of that MPP primaries. So a number of key businesses have suffered, particularly matters having to do with bills. There's a constitutional review amendment bill. There's a death penalty amendment bill, the bill that is seeking to repeal the death penalty. All those bills have been suffering for some time now. There have been a number of referrals that have been made to the committees as regards to tax waivers, import acceptance, among other things. All that has not been able to be dealt with. But today, business has progressed quite good so far, and matters having to do with quorum has not been raised. It is expected that from today through to the weekend and Monday, leadership on both sides will try and work to have some sort of agreement so that some of these issues will be dealt with. And so we expect that from next week, head of Parliament going on break on the 3rd of August, these matters will be dealt with so that key issues, particularly the media budget review, can be dealt with and debated.
All right. Thank you so much, Kwawu Asante, for updating us. Now we know that the media budget will be presented on Thursday, the 27th of July. Let's move on now. The Institute of Economic Affairs has indicated that the over-reliance on monetary policy in addressing the hikes in inflation would yield no results. The Institute is entreating government to address the supply-side factors driving inflation. According to Director of Research, Dr. John Kwawu, more collaboration is needed between the government and the Bank of Ghana to address the country's high inflation in the media budget scheduled for next week. He was speaking at a media interface on Ghana's IMF bailout organized by the Economic Governance Platform.
Rely on a monetary policy framework that essentially focuses on controlling demand pressures in the economy. But what we have come to realize is that our inflation is also determined, to a large extent by supply and cost factors. And this, we've been talking about food, we've been fuel, the importance of fuel in driving our inflation, transportation, and then of course the exchange rate. So you cannot use the Bank of Ghana policy rate alone, to just manage demand. You have to address the supply factors also. And this is what we have been calling for, for a long time. And we're just asking both Bank of Ghana and government to, cooperate, work together, so that they can also be addressing the supply and cost factors that drive inflation. We are happy to note that when it comes to the demand pressures, the program contains a provision for reducing what they call monetary financing of the budget by Bank of Ghana. In fact, government and the Bank of Ghana have signed a memorandum of understanding now for Bank of Ghana not to lend to government at all, under the program. So that will help to reduce the demand pressures. But we're saying that they should do something about the supply and cost factors as well.
Well, economist Dr. Patrick Isumin joins me on Zoom with a reaction to this. Good afternoon to you. Great to have you on the program. So the Monetary Policy Committee has been meeting this week to review the economy. So we expect an announcement of the policy rate next week. Now, the IEA raising concern about policy rate hikes as a means to tackle inflation. In their view, it is not effective. Your thoughts?
Good afternoon and good afternoon to viewers, and thanks for having me. I think that, I will agree with the sentiment that we should combine demand management measures with also measures to address the supply side constraints. So, but not to say that the current monetary policy framework has not been, or the current rate hikes has not been effective. I think it's clear from what we have learned that last year the Bank of Ghana probably extended more overdraft to the government than anticipated. So in some sense, you should think that there should be some excess liquidity in the system. So on that score, I think trying to make more reforms to cut the extent of financing, the deficit financing by the Bank of Ghana will help. But I think at the same time, we really need to address the problems with food production. We've seen that the current bout of inflation is really driven by food inflation. So it's important that in addition to the monetary policy measures, we should see real action to try and expand and then invest more into agric and food production.
Would you expect a hike in the policy rate? Do you advise that following the increase in inflation rate we've seen in the last couple of months after the meeting this week by the MPC?
I wouldn't be surprised to see a further hike of the rate. I think, back in January, February, and March, we were all beginning to think that we are on the path to disinflation. But the last few readings that we've seen have seen that there's been a stalling of the disinflation path. So I wouldn't be surprised, given the posture of the current MPC and their aversion towards, inflationary pressures. I wouldn't be surprised to see that they will raise the policy rate again.
And a World Bank report this week revealed about 850,000 Ghanaians were pushed into poverty as a result of rising inflation last year. How worrying is this?
Very worrying. I think that, in some sense, not very surprising, because like I just mentioned, much of the inflation we have been experiencing is driven by food inflation. And the poor spend a higher fraction of their incomes on food. So when food prices are rising, it becomes a concern. So, at the same time, you haven't seen wage rises keep up with the rise in the food, rise in overall inflation. So I think this is very concerning, and we really need to take measures to address not just to say we should, raise salaries across the board, because a big portion of the labor force are in the informal sector who will not necessarily benefit from public sector wage adjustment. But we have to address the root cause of the food production problems that we have, the food inflation that we have. We have to address that.
So Dr. John Kwawu in his presentation called for collaboration between the government and the central bank to tackle inflation. How can they collaborate on this? What should the government be doing, especially as they look to present the media budget next week?
No, I think, as it's been well articulated, at the moment we've had some fiscal dominance over the monetary policy. So it appears that monetary policy has been, or the central bank has been making adjustment to accommodate the fiscal problems that we've had. And I think that's where we really need that to stop. So I think that is why the IMF program contain measures to curtail that aspect. But coming to what we are going to do with the media budget, I'll be surprised to see if the government introduce any new tax handles. I think we've seen a lot of new taxes recently, some of which we haven't really fully implemented to see what they will do for our revenue side. But we also need to see more measures on the exemptions bill that were passed. I think it's widely acknowledged that we lose a lot of revenue through the exemptions. And if you're able to plug the holes from there, you'll be able to raise a lot more revenue, and then it wouldn't be necessary to impose any new tax handles. On the expenditure side, I would like to say the government should cut the expenditure, but at the same time, I think this government has not been very amenable to cutting expenditure. So as much as we want to see that happen, I don't really see that happening.
All right. Dr. Patrick Esuming, appreciate your time with us. Certainly good to speak with you. Dr. Patrick Esuming, an economist, sharing his thoughts about rising inflation and the media budget. Well, let's move on now to another story we're following for you. The Data Protection Commission is scaling up enforcement of the Data Protection Act 2012, Act 843, which, among other things, requires data controllers to register with the Data Protection Commission and renew registration every 2 years. The exercise is expected to be carried out from the 14th of August. Patricia Edusei-Poku is Executive Director of the Data Protection Commission, and she joins me on Zoom with more on this. Good afternoon to you, ma'am. So first of all, enlighten us about the Data Protection Act 2012, Act 843, and why enforcement is important. Can you hear me, ma'am? Good afternoon to you. Can you hear me?
I couldn't hear you just before this, so please repeat your question.
Yeah, so I was asking you to enlighten us about the Data Protection Act 2012, Act 843, and why enforcement is important.
Okay, so the Act powers individuals with certain rights under the law, and we are mandated as the regulator to explain this empowerment to people and to help them assert themselves under the law. At the same time, the Act also puts some principles out there that those who collect and use personal data must implement these requirements and comply with it, and to demonstrate accountability to us, the public, the data subjects. And so our duty is to hold them accountable to what the law expects them to do, and also the reasonable expectation of us, the data subjects. We stand in the stead of the people of Ghana to hold institutions accountable, and that is the enforcement that we are talking about, to check what they have said they will do with the data, to ensure that they are doing exactly that and not abusing the data. When I say abusing, it could be that they haven't implemented the relevant organizational measures that protects the data and ensures that there's continuous safeguarding of the data in their hands. You know, now data has a lot of value. It is what gives business their profitability, or what ensures that the business is effective and efficient and makes one business better than the other. The quality of your data depends on the worth of the institution or the company. And so if businesses are making themselves profitable based on the information they hold on us, then we, the public, have the right to also ensure that they are acting appropriately with the data. This is why enforcement is very critical to the successful delivery of our money.
Yes, and so what efforts have been made in the past to enforce the Act and our institutions complying?
To date, we have been cooperating a lot with institutions, building awareness, building capacity, ensuring that the businesses understand the interpretation of the Act, that they can put the legal requirements into business speak. That is our mandate to do, to ensure that the businesses have fully understood what we expect of them. We have been holding hands a lot, helping businesses to build their internal privacy programs. Many institutions, almost 1,000 institutions so far, have trained professionals to the certification level who have been placed in these institutions to implement the requirements of our privacy program, the nationwide legislative requirements. So we now want to check whether what they have agreed to do is what they are actually doing.
And so what would the enforcement exercise entail, and what sanctions are applicable to corporates?
So in the Ghana Act, we need to prosecute in order to apply fines and sanctions. But we will also be naming and shaming and bringing negligent leaders to order, those who are not enabling their institutions to follow the path that the law directs that they should. Because if the topmost positions and roles in the organization are not making the appropriate decisions to implement the requirements of data protection, you will find that the whole institution is defaulting from the front line to senior management. They are not implementing the reasonable expectation of us, the public. When you go into hospitals, you will expect some sort of effective management of the data and the sensitive information you give to them. Same in education, same in other institutions. And so we expect that the institution will be waking up to the fact that they have some responsibility to implement the requirements of the Data Protection Act. So we'll be attending some premises, doing spot checks on clearly published on the clearly published areas of the Act. First, checking if they are registered with the Commission, whether they've trained a professional, whether they are using appropriate technology, whether they are implementing security measures and additional organizational measures that educate the staff, for example, that tells staff exactly what they can and cannot do in the institution. This is the kind of thing we'll be looking for in our spot checks.
Well,
and those who are defaulting on these will be arrested by the police.
So that's set to start on the 14th of August. I want to ask you about a warning you issued last month, a public warning on data breaches by operators of online apps. How far has that gone? Has the situation improved?
So you remember that on 12th June, the DPC published the challenge we are having with a lot of complaints with those who have applied for these loan apps. We, for that whole week, were telling the public warning them about these loan apps and challenging the Bank of Ghana and Cybersecurity Authority, our peer regulators, to wake up and take action. Following our action, 14th Bank of Ghana then published a long list of these known non-compliant loan app developers and users and loan companies. Following this, on 12th July, the Cybersecurity Authority also held a press conference following a day of arresting a lot of these loan operators. 422 of them fraudsters were arrested, 419 being Ghanaians and 3 being of Chinese, Pakistani, and Indian origin were arrested as a result of this joint effort, collaborative effort of these multiple agencies.
Yeah, and that's some headway we've made, but something else developing, and I would like for the director to show this letter that has been going around. Some fraudsters deciding to use a letter from the DPC to fraud loan app victims. They pay 30 to 50 cedis a year for this letter to send to their contacts to exonerate themselves from their debt-shaming situation.
Thank you for bringing this up. I would like to bring this to the attention of the general public. The Data Protection Commission do not collect personal data of any member of the public in this way. Our letterheads do not go out to ask people to bring their personal data to us to help them resolve loan application. This is clearly a fraudulent approach by these loan companies and some opportunities in the ecosystem. And we have also reported this to the cybersecurity authorities to hunt down these guys and bring them to order.
Final message for people watching, I don't know about this and also about the exercise you intend to take.
So the final message is especially to data protection compliant authorities and institutions across the nation to wake up and do the needful, comply with the requirements of the Data Protection Act, take action now, and contact the commission, get yourself registered, commence the implementation of your internal privacy program, because we are aligning the data protection requirements with the digitization of the economy. It is critical to the success of our digitized economy. We have to jointly enable an unlocking of the potential of data in the Ghana economy and enable appropriate access and sharing to data and to increase innovation and to promote the use of digitized information appropriately in the national ecosystem. And so we are taking this enforcement week, triggering the enforcement date and enforcing the law actively from 14th August, and will not be dealing lightly with those who are ignoring the requirements of this law and not registering with the commission and taking action.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. Patricia Eduse-Epoko, Executive Director of the Data Protection Commission. Thank you for your time. Well, finally, Ghana has not got any strategic petroleum reserves now for crisis moments. This has been confirmed by Managing Director of the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company, Edwin Provençal, to Joy Business. But he insists there's no cause for alarm for now. He has been speaking on PM Express Business Edition.
We know we don't have money to buy the strategic reserves. We know that, but we are trying. What we do is we make sure we have enough inventory to keep the country running. The nation needs to have a certain conversation, and that conversation should lead to how we're going to finance our strategic reserves. It's a very critical information. If you ask me whether does Ghana need strategic reserves, I say yes, Ghana needs strategic reserves. If you ask me whether a for-profit company like Bost should be the one going to take a loan from the bank to keep petroleum products for the nation, I would say no. We can't do that because the strategic reserve, like I said, is like an insurance policy, and you and I who benefit from the insurance policy, we need to finance that reserve. How to finance it is a discussion that needs to be had by the policyholder and various stakeholders to find an optimal way of financing those reserves.
Is the Bost margin not enough to take care of all these operational costs of yours?
No. Bost margin is strictly for maintenance and operations of the network assets. And it's I mean, it used to be about 37%. 2021, it used to be 37% of our income. 2022, it moved to, or 2021 used to be about 47% of our income. 2021, it got to 37%. 2022, as I speak to you, it's about 11% of our income. It's nothing to write home about.
Certainly, there's much to talk about on that story, but that's our program this afternoon. Thanks for watching, everyone. But there is plenty to read this weekend on our website, myjoyonline.com/business, including Ghana Stock Exchange to boost liquidity access through commercial paper market establishment. You can read more about that. Can we do one more story before we go? Yeah, 34% of Ghanaians believe GDP growth to exceed IMF forecast for 2023. That's according to a report you can read on myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Daryl Kwawu. Thanks for watching The Marketplace. We will be back same time next week.